This week I learned there's no release day quite like a Brandon Sanderson release day. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another weekly update as the last day of vacation has kind of rolled around here. But, I don't want to bring anyone down with that who's been working all week. But it's been a fun week. Gotten lots of things kind of taken care of. And look, hey, I get the weekly update out on Friday when I don't have to go into the office. So it's there are good things and there are bad things, But a vacation winding down, it was very much needed to kind of recharge the batteries a little bit and get ready for these big events that have been happening within the fantasy community. Let's begin, like always, guys. Let's talking about what am I reading. I did finish The Last Kingdom by Sir Bernard Cornwell. Look, this was one that I was pretty sure I was going to like. I did love the television show. I was pretty sure I liked everything that I've read from Bernard Cornwell so far, which obviously was just 3 books, but they were all from the same series, the Warlord Chronicles. So I wasn't really too concerned about liking this, but it is nice to be confirmed that this was very, very good. Now, I will say what I like the most about this is the differences from the TV show, and I mean that in a good way, because, usually most times you're like, oh, well, whenever they adapt something, it's never really good because they change things. I can see both of them as their own thing, and I appreciate it since I watched the TV show before I read the books. What I like about this was in the show, clearly they wanted the face of Uhtred to be the main actor who plays him on the show. So I understood why they aged him up so quick. In this, he's preteen most of the book. Whereas in the show, he was a preteen for maybe 10 minutes, before he's the adult Uhtred. With this, I think maybe by the end, he's like 16 to 18. So it's interesting to see those layers, but seeing how they kind of tied things in on that show in different ways. So I still feel like it was a very faithful retelling of the source material, but it just changed Uhtred's age and his location at some of these key events, had him working, with the English far earlier than he was working with them in this. But it's very, very good. I like the way it does this quite a bit. Great coming of age story, which I'm a sucker for, but under these hard times, that you would live in that lifestyle going back and forth, basically with your family and your new allegiances off and on and things like that, making new ones, saying goodbye to old ones, and trying to protect those handful of people in your life that, have been a constant. It is a very, very tragic tale. There's a lot of loss in this book, as I think you would expect with that. But it just captures everything about the time period that I love. I just cannot get enough of Viking culture and history and their war with Wessex at the time. It's just really, really awesome stuff. And Bernard Cornwell, again, there's not a large amount of battles in this book, but when you got those one-on-ones, are always kind of a big deal. And he continues to show why he is the master at that. I've said I think that he's even better than Joe Abercrombie, who I didn't think anyone could write The Duel in the Circle. Much better than Joe. I think Bernard has done it now because he's done it with this, and he has done it with Warlord Chronicles. Now, I love the way he writes a good one-on-one fight. It's just so damn detailed, and you can just kind of picture it in your mind. But we'll be talking about this on the ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤𝕤 with Brian and Philip and John over at Talking Story. We'll be talking about that. I think this one's going to be on Philip's channel. No, I'm not sure. No, this is Philip's pick. So I think this one's going to be on Brian's channel. We're going to have to fix that. I'm going to have to get with those guys and say, whoever picks the book needs to host that video. I think that's the best way to do it. I don't know. Maybe they'll disagree with me. But we'll be talking about that on his channel over there on the 11th, I believe it is. Don't quote me on that. I'll drop it down below if it's a different date. But we'll be talking about that live over on Brian's channel. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 4 for 4. I don't see any of us not liking this. I felt like it was just the right length. And it was everything that I kind of loved about that TV show, put in a slow format. And again, like I said, I already kind of was endeared to the Uhtred character, but I feel like I'm endeared to him even more in this, seeing him grow up a little slower than it did in the show, because you're really, really rooting for this kid to pull through and find his way in this cruel, cruel time in history. I had one day between that and the big release that I think most of us are reading this week. And I said, well, I don't want to start anything new. I've got one day. So I said, why not? Why not try to go back to One Piece? This is volume number 28, still in the Skypiea arc. I know that Skypiea has gotten like a mixed kind of bag, because I said it felt like when I was leading up to it, it seemed like everyone said Skypiea was great. And then when I got to it and said I wasn't really feeling it, I'm shocked. It was a lot of people that came out and said, yeah, well, Skypiea is maybe a little bit overrated, but it is one of those that it takes a while to set up. And then the conclusion of it is really good. So with this, I think volume 28, really the standout was Chopper versus Gadatsu. That was really fun. I had a good time with that part. Otherwise, it was a lot of me trying to remember exactly where everyone was because I have taken a little bit of a break. But I hope to finish up Skypiea here, and then I'll kind of get the treads rolling a little bit again on reading some One Piece because I do love the series. I just think this arc just kind of it just I don't know. There was something about it just kind of I said I'm like that. I'm streaky with manga with comics where I'll read a ton and then I won't read any for like a year. So I'm like that. It wasn't really that it would like chase me off. But I do think that the Skypiea arc starting as slow as it did and being just kind of as baffling as it was, really, because I mean, look, that's One Piece. It's going to be very random. I expect that, but it seemed like every 5 seconds it was a new character dropping out of the sky and given like some huge backstory. I was like, who are these people? You know, and I do think that Oda Sensei is the master of backstory, so I'm not really worried about that. Sometimes I just like the characters to be there longer than 3 seconds before I get this big story about them. But I'm pretty sure he's going to stick the landing because he usually does up to this point. And my oldest son is just crazy about the Skypiea arc, and he keeps telling me, just keep going, you're going to love it once it does pop off. I hope that does happen here pretty soon. So what am I going to read? Well, guys, I think you all know what that is because we're all probably doing it within the fantasy community. That is Wind in Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I got lucky. Now, I pre-ordered the UK version on Amazon because I thought, I'll get it 6 hours earlier. That way I don't start at midnight like everyone else. For whatever reason, it popped up about 10:30 yesterday morning. So I lucked out there. So I started reading a little earlier. Gosh, I'm about chapter, I don't know, I'm in day 2 right now. I thought that I would maybe, because the way that this book is formatted, you know, without getting too spoilery here, there are these event that takes place in 10 days. So instead of it being part 1, part 2, all the way through 5, like he usually does these books, it's separated by day. Day 1, day 2, day 10. So I'm in day 2 right now. My goal was to say, hey, I'm going to read a day per day. But then I thought, I'm not reading 1,600 pages in 10 days. It's just not going to be possible for me here. But I do like the way that it has started. I was very, very open about being quite let down by Rhythm of War. But I said I was so confident in this book because I like the flashback character. And I do feel like this being the end of that first arc, Sanderson's the Sanderlanche is going to capture all of our wild times that we do love about his series. So I feel like I've been bombarded this week either with people that are going to be reading this book or people telling me that they have no interest in reading Brandon Sanderson. It's okay. There's quite a lot of room for both if you want to read Sanderson, if you don't. For me, it's like, you know, when a new Star Wars movie, back when I cared about those things, when a new Star Wars movie would come out, I always get a bunch of people being like, I never really liked Star Wars. Okay, that's awesome. But it's hard to kind of deny that Sanderson is the biggest thing in fantasy right now for as far as like the numbers game goes. About the number of people that are reading his books, it's quite obvious. But so far with Wind in Truth, I like what I've seen on half of the other half. I'm kind of iffy on. What I mean by that is the Kaladin stuff and the Zest stuff, Dalinar stuff, always there for it. I'm always there for it. The Shallan and Adolin stuff, I'm kind of still iffy on. And it isn't really necessarily those characters. Like, I know people love to hate on the Shallan character. I don't. I like Shallan. I love Adolin. I just don't want those two traipsing around alternate realms for so long. It's just not what I want them doing. I want my characters together. There's this big event coming in. I'm sure we're going to have kind of that assemble moment here at the end when everything comes together. But so far through the first, it's funny, I'm on page like 200 and I'm 12% in. Monstrous book. About 12% in, I'm like, okay, I want my characters together, but I don't really care too much for what Shallan and Adolin are doing up to this point. But again, I'm going to give it time. You know, a book this size is going to take a while to set all those pieces up, and I'm sure it will get there. But I'm liking several of the revelations. The prologue actually was like, wow, that's surprising. I didn't see that coming. And there are a couple of reveals already I've been quite surprised about. So that's basically what I'm going to be reading for probably the next 3 weekly updates. I don't imagine when I go back to work on Monday, it won't be a cluster. So I doubt I'll be able to keep this pace up of 100, 200 pages per day of Wind and Truth. But it does feel exciting to be back in the world of the Stormlight Archive. And I'm excited that so many others are doing it as well. If you were one of those like me that were not fortunate enough to go to Dragonsteel and actually go to that convention right now, that's serious FOMO seeing all those pictures. But hey, that's just it. One day is what I keep telling myself. How about this week on the channel, guys? Sticking with Wind and Truth, I did do my Wind and Truth wish list. That was really more of something I used to do with Wheel of Time. As before I went to each new book, I would talk about what I'm hoping to see in that. It's never really meant to be like a theory thing. I do make my predictions for what I'd like to see and what I think will happen in the book. But it's just, on the surface level stuff. If you want me to get deep into like the heralds and the bondsmiths and the sprint, no, I don't do that. It's really just the biggest questions, I think going into the book, and kind of what my guesses are going to be. Who lives, who dies, all those kinds of fun things. So it's one of those where if you've already started reading the book, I don't think it's anything that you can say, well, I have no interest in that now. Really, it's just my thoughts of what I hope is going to happen, what I think would happen, what maybe shouldn't happen, or I'm kind of scared of happening, But again, it's just a lot of speculation. You've had 4 years to think about this story and what you'd like to see. It just kind of talks about some things I'd like to see and some things I have no interest in seeing any more of, don't want to see that anymore. And I talk about those things in that video. So, hey, if you've read the first 4 books, check it out. If you haven't, do not, because I am spoilery as hell for the first 4 books of Stormlight Archive. I also wrapped up November and named my book of the month. Very, very close. Very close, because I think the book that was the runner-up might be like one of my top 50 books of all time. It's kind of amazing to think about it like that. But I think it's just the excitement, the anticipation for the other book, the one that did win, is more played into that. I had high hopes for it, and I felt like it exceeded them. So I wanted to go ahead and recognize it as my book of the month. So if you don't know what that is, hey, check the video out. Maybe you'll be surprised, and maybe not. If you've been a watcher of these weekly updates, you'll probably won't be too surprised to see what that pick was. But it was fun to talk about, even though I know some of you, here's a hint, didn't want me talking too much about it. So it's spoiler free. Don't worry about that. But I talk about the things I did really enjoy about it. How about some next week plans? Got a couple things on the docket here. I meant to do my biggest surprises of 2024 this past week, but I decided to do that Wind and Truth one since obviously the book was coming out. I didn't really have any other place to put it, so I just went ahead and moved that to next week. What that is really is I take a look at some of the biggest surprises, some books that, maybe surprised me how much I liked them, some books that I expected to love and I was kind of disappointed by it, things like that. Because some of the biggest surprises on the channel, some things maybe in life, just kind of outside the box a little bit. Something I did last year, and people seem to like it quite a bit. So I thought I'd go ahead and make it like an annual thing with my my wrap-up stuff for the end of each year. And that should be coming out early next week, as well as my book haul for November. This will be one of the smaller book hauls, at least comparatively. The last few months, I think last month, it was like a half hour that video was. This one, just looking at it, not as heavy of a month, which is fine. It's just fine by me always, because this room's getting, it's not a TARDIS. It's getting smaller. It's getting very much smaller. I'm going to replace all this furniture with just stacks of books here very, very soon. But again, these are good problems to have, and this is the business we have chosen. Look for those sometime next week as I do make the transition back to the workplace. Do got a couple of TV and movie talk things here before I go. I am a huge fan of Alan Moore's Watchmen. That's maybe my favorite graphic novel. That or Preacher is my favorite graphic novel / comic of all time. It's one of those that I think it stands right up there with 1984, Fahrenheit 451, and that it's always relevant to every new generation. They'll say, oh yeah, this is going on right now. It's one of those that always stays relevant because of the source material. And I think it's one of those things where if you're jaded with the superhero genre right now, because we've gotten oversaturated with the movies so much, I think it's when you can go and read that comic where it is very much a deconstruction of the superhero, and it might resonate with you a little more than it might not have when you were at the peak of the Infinity Saga and you were loving everything about superheroes. But again, it's one of those that will make you think. And I've got to say, this adaptation that they're doing on HBO right now is an animated version of the comic, and it is page for page. It takes out some of the Black Freighter stuff. Some of it's in there, but it takes out some of the Black Freighter stuff. But I think it's awesome. It's one of those where it feels almost like an apology for that abomination that was the 2019 series. Yeah, I'll stand by that. I love that original comic, and I don't feel like that show was anything but a middle finger to what Alan Moore wrote. So yeah, I will no problem at all saying I thought that was garbage, and this feels like the makeup for that. It's just part 1 is on HBO Max right now, which goes through Rorschach's capture. But I think with part 2, you can get it on digital right now. I was like, I'll just wait for HBO because it is very much just a retelling of the comic. It's so faithful to the source down to the very word. It's really excellent. The voices are very good, very, very good. I think you got the guy that plays Bosch. God, what's it? Titus Welliver? Is that his name? He's voicing Rorschach. He does a really great job. I'm liking all of it so far. The animation is beautiful. It almost looks like a motion comic in some regards, but it's really, really great, guys. I think you should definitely check it out. If you've never ever seen Watchmen the movie or you've never read the comic, I definitely think this is a great place to start. But again, it's one of those like give it some time to cook, because if you just wanted to going into it thinking, oh, it's just gonna be superheroes punch in the face and have fun. No, it is nothing like that. It's a very, very serious story. Or superheroes, or it's quite jaded from what you would find in your bright, shiny, happy superheroes always do the right thing kind of story. It's really, really deep. But like I said, for me, it'll always stand right there with Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, something that's always going to feel like it's relevant to no matter what generation you are growing up in. We did get this thing where we had an offer on Black Friday for, because we always usually get like the Hulu with ads for $1 a month for a year. We'll always do that. And this year, we were about to cancel that. And they said, well, we'll give you a new offer. You can get Hulu and Disney Plus for $2 a year if you bet it's got with ads. And I was like, okay, or $2 a month for 1 year. I said, all right, look, my wife, she loves the old Disney animation classics. She was watching all those with the kids again. And I thought, hey, you know what? Some of those old movies that I love are on there. Like we watched Angels in the Outfield, which as far as I know has never had a DVD release date, or never a DVD or Blu-ray or any kind of release. So that's like the only way to watch it. So that was cool, getting to watch that with my kids, because they're right there where I think they're going to start to find something like that hokey. But they really did enjoy it. But I decided to show them Flight of the Navigator. Now, if you don't know, guys, this was one of my favorite movies of the 80s. I just latched onto this movie when I was a kid. It's one of those that, like, at the time, it was like, okay, but it's kind of got like a huge cult following from Gen X now. And it's one of those I feel like is still a perfect family movie. If you can get your kids to sit still, because like my youngest kid, ADD Nation, if he was like pretty much like a very definition of ADD, that would be my youngest. We're trying to get him to get into a new movie, because he'll find the movies he loves and he'll latch onto them. It's all he wants to watch. He just watch them over and over again. So with this, it's like I got to, because it starts super slow. Once you get into it, and once Davey gets on that spaceship, man, that story hits a new level for kids. And it's just so good. The voice of Pee Wee Herman when he was in his heyday. And my kids walk around the house now saying, compliance. The thing for me is I'll always remember Alan Silvestri's soundtrack. I had this soundtrack on a cassette when I was a kid. I just loved that soundtrack so much. And it's a touching movie. It has a ton of heart, and it will punch you in the feels at the very end. So it's one of those, I think, even today, because it takes place in 1978, 1986, it can be kind of like that Stranger Things feeling to where you can say, okay, I can look at this and say, I never grew up in the 70s or the 80s, but I can get into this because you don't have to explain away technology and social media and cameras in everybody's pockets and stuff like that. It's really good, guys. It's a really, really great flick. And that for me, that was worth $1 a month that I'm paying now for Disney Plus to watch with an ad in the middle of it. Whatever, that's fine. But yeah, great movie. And again, you got young kids, I definitely say check it out. I want to end this with some gaming talk, and I know some people were like, hey, how's Cyberpunk 2077 going? I got derailed. Look, I want to say up front, I love the early Final Fantasy games. I love them. I feel like the series has kind of lost its way. I don't feel like it's Final Fantasy anymore. I think around Final Fantasy X is when Final Fantasy started going for flash over substance. They wanted the pretty graphics. They wanted the huge epic scenes. And the storyline just was always just kind of flat. Whereas I think back to like those first 3 Final Fantasies in the States, which would be 1, 4, and 6 in Japan, or 1, 2, and 3 here in the States. I love those games so much, and I've replayed them so many times I can't even talk about it. And when they came out with this Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster thing, I did that whole thing where I was like, I'm not buying your digital-only release. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to get into this rabbit hole of you thinking you can just charge me for air, basically. And that's the way that I treat it. I know that's a big, long topic. We'll get into another time. I've talked about it over on Mike's Media Reviews before. But it's one of those where it's the fact of the matter. I am still a physical release buyer. I want the physical disc because I don't want you one day to flip a switch and decide I can't have it anymore, which can happen and has happened. With this I really wanted it. I really wanted it because there's games on there, Final Fantasy 2 and 3 and 5. We never got those here in the States. We never got them in English. So I wanted to play them. But I was like, I'm not buying that. And then when they did come up with a physical one, I think it was only on the Square Enix store, and I missed it. I didn't get one. And I saw they were going on eBay for like $200, $300. I was like, well, I guess I'll just never get it. Well, they did do a re-release, and I did pick it up on a Black Friday sale. And I played all of Final Fantasy 1, and I'm playing Final Fantasy 2 for the first time right now. And these upgrades are amazing, guys. It basically takes the original games that were on the NES and makes them basically like Super Nintendo graphics. So they look kind of like Final Fantasy 6, but it's worth it alone just for the remastered soundtracks, because some of those soundtracks ingrained in my brain forever. I'll never forget them. But now hearing them fully orchestrated instead of MIDI style, incredible. Like, I want to buy these soundtracks because they sound amazing. And the original guy who did the music actually oversaw like the remake. It's just a lot of fun. So it's nostalgia essential, but for me, like I said, getting to play some of those Final Fantasy games I never got to play for the first time, very exciting. So that's kind of derailed my plans for playing Cyberpunk this week, because I took a stroll down memory lane and I'm like, well, I'm excited to play these Final Fantasy games I never played before. And playing Final Fantasy 2, I'm just like, whoa, this has got like a completely different experience system, the way it levels up your weapons and your magic instead of like traditional XP building up your levels. Very cool. So the storyline's like whatever. Again, it was a game that was come out in I think it was like 1990. I think that one came out. So, it didn't really reach the heights that you told with storytelling that you get, like, starting with, like, I guess Final Fantasy 4, which was 2 in the States. I know I've confused everybody here. But it's fun. It's a trip down memory lane, but getting to play these games I never got to play before feels like a glitch in the Matrix. I'm finally getting to play some of these games we never got to see. It's like when you got to play Mario The Lost Levels for the first time, which was Super Mario Brothers 2. Over in Japan that we didn't get. It was really, really fun. So it feels like it's filling up those gaps that we never got to see in our childhood. And this collection's amazing. I say grab it right now if you can. I think it's on PS4 and Xbox One, I think. But, you don't have to worry about it. You can still play them on your PS5. You can still play on your Series X. And I think it's on Switch as well. So, if you're into the Final Fantasy games, I think that's awesome. I can't wait to play 6. Because Final Fantasy 3 here in the States, which is 6 in Japan, again, it's chronologically confused here. That's my favorite Final Fantasy ever, even over 7. So I'm so looking forward to playing that again with this newly remastered touch and that incredible soundtrack upgrade. But guys, that was my week. I'd love to know what your week's like. Are you reading Wind and Truth? I hope you are. If you are and you want someone to read along with, I've opened a thread on the Discord. A bunch of us are talking about it over there. No one's going to spoil anything for you. Everyone just lists the chapter number, and then they do spoiler tags. So people that read a lot faster or listen to the audiobook, they're just going to, look, I'm reading it eyes only. So, I'll be going at a pace that you can all keep up with, I think. So please join the Discord. The link is down below if you want to join the Discord and come in there and talk some Wind and Truth with us. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As far as if there's going to be like any kind of spoiler discussion about Wind and Truth, I don't know. Haven't really talked about it very much. Don't know what we're going to do with that. But we'll be doing something for it there, I think, here after I do finish the book. Probably around Christmas-ish. That's probably the time I'm expecting to finish this book. But drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you're up to, what you're reading, what you're watching, what you're listening to, what you're playing. And I will talk to you there.